live on here. Still going to give it a minute or two. Just be quicker if I do this from my phone. For those of you that have joined us, welcome. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. We apologize for the delay. Had a couple of, I'll call it production issues or kinks to work out, but we've got that taken care of. I'm going to give it a second for some people to jump on. We'll get rolling at we'll call it 9:20 our time, so in about a minute. Once again, we appreciate everyone's patience with us this morning, getting started a little late, but had a couple of kinks to work out on our end. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. All right, it's 9:20. Let's do this. Good Monday morning to everyone out there in Facebook land or YouTube land or podcast land, wherever you will be checking us out at the moment or later. I am Alex. Cole is here. T.O., obviously is not because we're running a 2-screener this morning. So, thanks again to everyone that's joining us right now. We had a couple of production kinks and snafus to work out this morning, but we got that taken care of. Cole, how was your weekend?
It was a great weekend. How was yours?
Not too shabby. Spent some time with my family. We went to the zoo Saturday. There was a game on last night. I was just something. I mean, I guess it's a popular thing, but I mean,
Don't even make a joke about the Super Bowl like that. Oh, it was a good game.
It was. Good old Patty Mahomes has officially been put on the map.
The Madden curse is broken.
True. That is very true. I read a little bit about that this morning. I was like, hey, that's no longer a thing. But yeah, we're a wrestling podcast, so we can't talk about that.
Unless he's going
Anymore.
to wrestle.
True. I mean,
Breaking news, Patrick Mahomes to the WWE.
well, we'll see about that. So yeah, this morning we're just going to kind of recap some of the past weeks. Not the past week. So I'm still getting used to this twice a week format. SmackDown on Friday. New Japan also actually had a few shows. 2 shows technically over the weekend. They had a 2-night event in Japan. They also had their what was the name of it? It was their special USA event, New Beginning USA. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we're gonna discuss a topic of what we would like to see happen in the world of wrestling this year, and that's where you, the listeners or viewers, come in. We would like to see what you have to say. We would like to read your comments on the air. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's start with, and we won't spend a whole bunch of time recapping. In general, I think we're going to try to spend less time recapping the weekly shows. So SmackDown this past Friday. I watched bits and pieces of it. I don't care for the segments that start off shows. I mean, just a concept in general. I don't really care for starting off a program with a segment, promo, whatever. I think in general, if you're a wrestling show, you should start off the show with a wrestling match. Not to get off on a soapbox on that. I don't know. I think that's what turns me off to a lot of WWE programming, is that you know that their show is always going to open with a promo, an interview, whatever. That's why I like AEW, because most times on a Dynamite show, they've started off with a wrestling match. But anyway, they did the thing with Reigns and Corbin. Usos were involved. Bobby Roode and Ziggler were involved. It set up that match. Well, it set up the match later in the show, but was that announced ahead of time, or?
I'm not sure if they announced that it was going to be like a 6-man match. I think that was announced, and the segment was to add the dog food element.
Yeah, and we'll get there. They need to do away with it anyway. So then they have the number 1 contenders match for the tag titles. You almost knew it was going to be Miz and Morrison. It doesn't make sense to have Lucha House Party challenge for the belts. You know the Revival aren't going to challenge for it because they're all but on their way out.
Yeah.
I mean, they've allegedly...
Unless that's WWE trying to find a way to keep them still because they're throwing big money at them as well.
I think at this point, I think the word is they're just ready to leave.
Yeah,
it's like they wouldn't be offered any amount of money that would make them stay.
They'll still try though.
Probably. I don't know. So you basically had either Miz or Morrison or Heavy Machinery. It doesn't seem like they're pushing Heavy Machinery with the whole Otis and Mandy Rose thing. I just think it doesn't make sense to have a Heavy Machinery and New Day match. So by default, it's like
The only reason why I would have thought, because I was between the entire time watching the match, I was like, it's gonna be with one of these two. The only reason why I would have thought that is if they were to go to challenge for the belts and then the Mandy Rose distraction cost them.
true.
Because this was for a Super Showdown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping we'd save the Miz and Morrison match for at least Elimination Chamber, but
I'm wondering, the only thing that would have made sense and it not be a predictable finish is if they had some kind of a double pinfall with Heavy Machinery and Miz and Morrison, where like, Otis pins Miz, but Morrison pins Tucker, and they have like a double finish or whatever, and it will set up a 3-way or triple threat match, whatever. So predictable ending there. The match itself, I did watch. It was okay. It had some, I don't even want to say decent spots. It was just,
it was like I would grade it like a B.
Probably. I was gonna say it was above average, but it was what it was. It served its purpose. Miz and Morrison are number one contenders. So then they have the match for the women's tag team, or the number one contendership.
Supposedly, like they didn't make that official, which made a lot of people mad.
Yeah, I think it's
implied. I mean, is it
I don't know.
Women's tag teams aren't really being pushed right now, anyways.
Exactly. So you had Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross against Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. Excuse me. So you have Alexa get the pin on Mandy Rose. Supposedly they're number one contenders. We'll see what happens there. And even the announcers kind of gave like their mixed signals on whether or not they were number one contenders. Another reason I feel like WWE programming and AEW also, they'll draw these ambiguous conclusions, and it makes you wonder if it's a storyline thing or if it's just like, oh, the announcers really don't know what's going on, kind of thing. Right. Then you had the match that was very heavily plugged. Everyone wanted to see, and Cole and I talked a little bit about this before we went on. The Intercontinental title match with Strowman and Nakamura. I told Cole before we went on, it almost didn't make sense to not put the belt on Strowman, because if you didn't, then what do you do? Like, what would you do with Strowman at this point if you did not put the belt on him?
Yeah, he loses legitimacy altogether if you keep putting him down on it when the moment is there for him to shine.
Unless they would have set something up for Elimination Chamber and have him win that, or just, I feel like they've slowly built it up so much that they couldn't have slowly built it up anymore. Like, it just would have dragged on if you were trying to push it to WrestleMania. And even then, it doesn't. I mean, Strowman Nakamura is not a WrestleMania match, in my opinion.
No, and I was telling you that before the show, is that I just don't know if Shinsuke can be put up with anybody else while holding the Intercontinental title and say, hey, that's a pay-per-view match. And so I think they're either getting ready to repackage Shinsuke, or they got another storyline for him that he shouldn't have the belt for. So I'm kind of interested to see what they do there. And then I told you, I think Sheamus will be kind of the next guy to go against.
Which makes
Strowman.
sense. I just hope, as far as going back to Nakamura, I hope they don't just package him as this comedy act with Zayn and Cesaro, because all three of those guys deserve better than just a comedy shtick once a week. I don't know. It's just, you've got a roster of guys where the guys that are the best, that have the best in-ring talent, and this is just my opinion. This is just one guy's opinion. But the guys that have the best in-ring talent, you're using for garbage purposes, for comedy acts, for dog food gimmicks. We'll get there in a second. And I'm specifically referring to Dolph Ziggler, and even Bobby Roode to some degree. I'm not going to get too far ahead on that, but Usos, as much as I'm not a fan of the Usos. I just never really have been. I've never gotten into them, but they're good in the ring. I'll give them that. So we'll get there. And then you had what looked to be Elias and Cesaro, but that ends with Elias just.
I don't think face pretty much. So they were interviewing Sami Zayn about what just happened with Nakamura.
That's right. Okay.
And then got interrupted by Elias in the ring. Elias was supposed to sing a song. Cesaro was sent out to shut him up. And sets up a little program there potentially for Cesaro and Elias.
Okay. So that match doesn't happen. Another reason why, just if you're going to have was this match announced ahead of time, or was it just?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was just announced that Elias was supposed to have a match,
but it wasn't like a plugged match ahead of time.
Because neither one of them were really dressed to fight.
That's right. They were in their street clothes.
So it was kind of just like a.
But then again, Elias is always in street clothes.
Elias was supposed to perform by definition.
Yeah, that's right. So then we have another sleeper match, I'll call it, is a rematch of the Royal Rumble pre-show. Sheamus and Shorty G. Of course, Sheamus gets I'll call it a quick win. And then the Bayley segment, that's what it was. So what do you think happens with Bayley? I'm just so confused as to if they're going to. I almost think they were going the route of having a Bayley-Sasha feud, but I think Sasha is injured and WWE is not saying anything about it because they are throwing Naomi into this, and it doesn't make sense.
So actually, to me, it does because they gotta fill time, and so she's gonna challenge her at Super Showdown. That covers that pay-per-view. It doesn't hurt Naomi. Honestly, Bayley's not going to lose the belt to her, so it doesn't hurt Bayley to take another win.
Sorry, I kind of miscommunicated my thoughts at this. It doesn't not make sense having Naomi in the picture. It doesn't make sense that Sasha is just
off TV.
Nowhere to be seen without an explanation.
They'll just say she's working on her album. Like they'll cover it with some silly thing. But I love the booking decision because it gets Naomi back into the picture. But she doesn't, she takes the L. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
It gets Bayley built up just a little bit more before Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania. I think if Sasha's injured, she's not injured hard. Otherwise, they would have announced it. So to me, it's a minor injury. They're just trying to play it off and not really mention it. Have her come back in during Elimination Chamber time. Seem like she's in Bayley's corner. You could do the turn right at Elimination Chamber. Bayley Sasha at WrestleMania.
And then that sets up the loser eats dog food match. I would put this up there with the worst gimmick matches in the history of wrestling because, believe it or not, this is not the first time that there has been a loser eats dog food match in WWE, much less wrestling. It's not worth going into the history of it because it's just a stupid gimmick.
Do you feel like this was just something that they felt like they had to do because they already wrote it so deep of a storyline that we have to do this because we already did it?
I think it's just WWE creative being lazy, in my opinion. That's just the way I look at it.
Because they did such a dog food gimmick when Roman Reigns was by himself, and I just feel like this was probably written months ago, and they're just like at this point like, well, might as well stick to our guns because we've already have gone this far. You know what I mean?
I just hope this is the blow off to the whole dog food stuff. Period.
I've read that was the end of the whole storyline. I'm hoping that's true.
Yeah, same here.
You and I both know that could probably be false, but I'm hoping that's the end of the storyline. We can get back to the Usos being a real tag team and being in tag team wrestling. We can get back to Dolph and Rude if they're going to stay together, being a real tag team.
Yep.
And tag team wrestling. And
yep. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but I have some thoughts on Ziggler and Rude as it pertains to our topic later in the show. All right, so that covered SmackDown. do we want to talk about 205 Live at all? I mean,
I don't. I do want to mention this because we talked about NWA on the last show, and
Right.
I started watching this, and I sent this to you. I thought this was just really interesting, the Nick Aldis Marty Scurll feud.
mhm.
I just want to bring attention to the fact that now the stipulation is that
Yeah.
they're gonna fight, but if Scurll loses, he has to refund every single person's ticket that's in the audience on that event, which is like a pay-per-view, I believe that they're getting ready to book.
Yeah.
Or they still haven't picked a location yet, which I thought was funny that Nick Aldis was like, "Hey, put your bids in now because we still don't have a spot for this."
Mhm.
But like that whole little promo or whatever that they did together with a closed set, and they talked about it. He was like, "Hey, you can think about it, but this is my terms. Like, you're gonna fight me, and if you lose, you're gonna pay every single person back their ticket." And I was like, "Well, I want to be in the audience on
Right.
that one."
Right. It wouldn't surprise me if they still have Scurll lose, and whether everyone in the audience does get their refund or not. Here's why. So Ring of Honor is starting their like this free enterprise thing where they essentially let me look this up real quick because I don't want to give incorrect information about why they're doing this. Essentially what it means exactly, and I want to give the correct information. So basically it's so I would have been correct. It's an event that they're doing on February 9th in Baltimore at their UMBC Event Center. It's basically if you attend this event, it's absolutely free. They're not charging a ticket. I don't know if it's a first come first serve when it comes to seating, but supposedly this is something they're going to be doing frequently. Like, it's not just a one-time event. It's not just Free Enterprise is the name of the show. I know I've read somewhere that they're wanting to do this multiple times a year. But the first one is actually this upcoming week. It's this upcoming Saturday, I think. The 9th? Is 9th Saturday? Yeah. No, 9th is Sunday, I'm sorry. So this upcoming Sunday in Baltimore, it's their Free Enterprise event. Tickets are free. And the fact that they're doing this on a multiple times a year, that's why I think that Scurll might actually still lose, because it's going to be for the belt. It's either going to be it's going to be one of three things. It's going to be Scurll wins the belt, Scurll wins, but by DQ or count out or something like that, which wouldn't surprise me either, or Aldis wins and Scurll has to pay for everyone's ticket in the audience. Now, excuse me. Now, how they go about that is it's kind of an interesting thing, because let's throw out scenarios. Let's say Aldis wins and he's still the champion. What happens with Marty Scurll at that point? Does he still have that relationship with NWA? Do they push a long-term chase for the belt? Obviously, the audience would have to be refunded their tickets for whatever event this is. Same scenario, if Scurll wins by DQ, do they still push him as trying to get the NWA title? Or let's say Scurll wins and he becomes NWA champion. Obviously, at that point, Ring of Honor and NWA are going to have some kind of working relationship, because a Ring of Honor contracted talent is going to be champion of another organization. Any way you look at it, there's going to be an interesting scenario, and I'm intrigued to see how it's going to play out. I like what NWA is doing. I like what Ring of Honor is doing, and again, that's something I'm going to go into more detail about whenever we talk about our topic later in the show. I'm interested to see what happens with that, but any scenario wouldn't surprise me, even if Scurll loses and has to refund the tickets.
Right.
All right. So, New Japan. We all love New Japan Wrestling. So the only thing I wanted to cover about their New Beginning USA event, so it was in Atlanta. I want to say this past Friday or Saturday. The only thing I wanted to mention is they actually had a big title change. They had the Guerrillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tongaloa beat David Finlay and Juice Robinson to become the new IWGP Tag Team Champions. This was actually a rematch from Wrestle Kingdom 14 when Juice and Finlay beat the Guerrillas of Destiny to win the belts. So they had a short tag title run. Robinson and Finlay got the shot at the tag titles initially because they won the World Tag League tournament. It's interesting that New Japan is running title changes outside of Japan. I mean, I like the fact that they're doing it. But it's one of those things that, let's say, so WWE obviously had their title change in Saudi Arabia when they put the belt on The Fiend. Do you think we're going to see more of that? So a show that runs in a foreign country to them, do you think we're going to see more title changes, like, for example, WWE in their Saudi shows, New Japan in their American shows, or just in general, AEW, they had right now Kenny Omega is the AAA, their main champion. Do you think we're going to see more of that, or do you think that's just a coincidence of events that have happened over the last 6 months?
I think all the promotions are learning that they got to find ways to keep people on their toes, though. And we all got the perception with like a Saudi show, it's not that big of a deal. Because, WWE, they signed the contract to get the money pretty much, but they don't really care to put on programs that affect the storylines that hard. They put on kind of one-off storylines for those kind of events. And I think we saw with The Fiend winning the championship that we need to be watching those shows still. That it is involved with their product. It's not just a one-off show it's not like a tribute to the troops or something like that where, it's done to be classy, but it's done to still play into the storyline. So I'm glad that they're doing it because it makes me actually want to watch the event now because it's not one of those, it's a very predictable card. Obviously so-and-so's not going to lose the belt there and so on and so forth. And I think you got to be choosy about what belts you do it with. I think The Fiend winning it there was great because The Fiend was over. I don't know if you have a title change in a really weird or bad way. Like, I don't think you could put the belts on Baron Corbin on a show that is out of our area because it could start a riot. Might start a riot here. Who knows? But
I can imagine WWE holding an event and say, what is it, the shows that ECW used to be in, that Meridian Ballroom or whatever it is, because those crowds are very lively. That would give them an excuse to have a small scale riot, I'll call it. I was going to say something and I totally blanked. I'll think of it. So then we go to New Japan's 2-day event in Japan. I didn't want to talk a whole lot about this. They had a couple of intriguing matches on day one. They had Jay White and Kenta against Sonata and Tetsuya Naito. Kenta, who a lot of people remember as, apparently I don't. I can't think of his name. Who was Kenta in NXT? Why am I drawing a blank? It's Monday.
I'll tell you.
I bet it about hit me. Jeez.
I got you.
Hideo Itami. Wow. Okay. That's another guy that WWE dropped the ball on. Hideo Itami could have been much bigger.
They're just really bad at pushing the Japanese talent, though.
No,
in general, like because you got Tauza there too, and even Kairi Sane and Asuka and so far so all of them, like they all seem to, even Shinsuke, like all of them seem to be big on NXT, and then they go into the WWE and Raw, SmackDown, whatever, and it's like they just get lost.
It seems like you almost feel like it's a different crowd or demographic of people that watch Raw and SmackDown versus NXT.
It's actually more because Raw and SmackDown are so promo heavy, and if you can't cut a promo, you don't survive on that roster. Well, the problem is Asuka can barely speak English.
True.
Kairi Sane can barely speak. I don't know about Kenta, but the rest of them, like from what I can understand, most of them can barely speak English.
Yeah.
So it really hurts them on the main roster.
That's when I feel like you just put a mouthpiece with them. I mean, if they can...
Well, you see that with Sami Zayn, with Shinsuke, and I think they were trying to do that with Asuka and Kairi with Paige. It just was the wrong person.
You almost need, like... So if they had Kenta in the... how they've got him packaged, so to speak, right now in New Japan as this like this heavy hitter. I can't even think of the right word. Just this tough as nails, whatever. Almost like it. I don't want to say a Japanese version of Brock Lesnar because it's not in the sense that we think that the guy that shows up 6 times a year. I'm saying like this. Just a physically like. He's talented in the ring, but if you put like a Heyman with him whenever he was in NXT and in WWE, I think it would have worked. Just my opinion, one guy's opinion. I don't know. We'll never know. It's interesting that they had. Actually, I don't know who took the loss in that tag match, but it's interesting because you've got Naito, who is their current double champion. So we'll see what happens there. The more intriguing thing I thought that happened that night, well, 2 things. They had the IWGP Never Openweight Championship changed hands. I'm going to mispronounce names. I'm bad with names, period, much less Japanese names. Takagi defeated Goto to become the new champion. And it's the reason I bring that up is because New Japan, they don't hotshot titles ever. I mean, if you go back just within the last 3 or 4 years, title changes are rare, especially outside of bigger events. Now, this 2-day event is one of their bigger ones, but it's not humongous, I'll say, in terms of popularity or attendance. But it was a title change nonetheless, and it's one of those things where with New Japan, they book their champions well in the sense that you don't know when a title change is going to happen. Then the other thing on night 1, Minoru Suzuki and Taichi defeated Jon Moxley and Kazuchika Okada. I told Cole before we went on, the thing I found interesting was that they had Moxley take the pinfall, and it was a clean pinfall. It was just a straight up like a Michinoku style pile driver from Suzuki, and Moxley got pinned. So they're obviously setting up a Suzuki Moxley match for the IWGP US title, which they've been setting that up already. But I find it interesting that they had Moxley take a pinfall because I'm pretty sure that's his first legit clean pinfall to date in New Japan.
It's a good sign though, because you don't want to make him so unbeatable that he loses it to the wrong loses that belt to the wrong person and hurts him.
Yeah.
So I think it was good to have him lose that tag match where it wasn't as big of a loss.
Right. And it's another thing that's interesting is he's still selling the eye injury from Jericho from a couple weeks ago. Not that he shouldn't. It's just nice in this day and age that you actually see storylines that carry over from promotion to promotion. It's just a cool observation because it's not easy just seeing with one eye, much less trying to do a wrestling match. I mean, he's legit got an eye patch on. Whether or not he can see through it at all, I mean, I don't know. It looks like a legit eye patch to me, but we don't know for sure. And then night 2, the only thing I want to mention here was the Will Ospreay Zack Sabre match for the Rev Pro British Heavyweight Championship. I have not gotten a chance to watch this match. I've not actually gotten a chance to watch any of night 2. I watched a little bit of night 1, just through like YouTube clips and things like that. I have not gotten to watch any of night 2, but I've heard that this match with Ospreay and Zack Sabre Jr. was a phenomenal match. I told Cole before we went on, not that it shouldn't, it's almost expected, because Will Ospreay is like the new version of Kenny Omega, what Kenny Omega was before he went to AEW. Like, anytime Kenny Omega had a match, you expected it to be at least a 4-star match, if not better. Will Ospreay is like the Kenny Omega of, New Japan, Ring of Honor, whenever he was wrestling, Okada and Tomohiro Ishii, and I'm just trying to think of who he wrestled in Ring of Honor. I don't know. Anyway, I'm looking forward to somehow getting access to this match and watching it. But Zack Sabre did get the win. He retained the title. And then there was like a schmoz after the match where they had basically the guys from the tag match from the night before, Taichi and Okada, come in. They have their little schmoz, and then, ultimately, if I read this correctly, I'm pretty sure that, hold on, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the night before, after the tag match. My bad. The night before, they had Zack Sabre come out and try to rough up Okada. Then Ospreay tried to make the save, but it didn't work. But the tag match from the night before set up the Taichi Okada singles match, which ultimately Okada won with the Rainmaker. I like the fact that they're protecting his Rainmaker finish as much as they are. Lost lights. There we go. I hate the fact that these lights are motion censored. I like the fact that they're protecting finishers in general in Japan. Some are they still do like the surprise kickouts and things like that. Anyway, so that was a quick recap of SmackDown and New Japan. So we're getting ready to go into our next topic. Before we do, I want to read a couple comments. Mark Cyrus says New Japan Pro Wrestling treats a title like it should. They pick a person to run with the ball and don't waver from the plan until it's time to. 100% agree. And that's why I don't give much value to titles or championships in WWE nowadays. It's just you either have people passing it back and forth, or you've got guys like Brock Lesnar that sure they carry the title for months at a time, but they don't wrestle for months at a time, so it makes no difference. Yeah, totally agree. That's why I think New Japan Pro Wrestling is going in the right direction. And I won't go into too much because we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Just some things that we would like to see happen in 2020. If you guys are on the stream right now, if you're watching, give us some suggestions and comments. We'll read them on the air. What would you like to see in the world of wrestling in 2020? We'll get to that in just a second.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
So you can check out the Going Broadway podcast with new shows every week on Apple Podcasts and Google Play, as well as a number of other platforms where you can access your podcasting. For those of you watching us live right now, each show is archived, and you can go back and watch any one of them on Facebook or via our YouTube channel as well. Go to goingbroadwaypodcast.com/YouTube and check us out. Please also download our free app. It's called Yo Radio. It can also be downloaded through the App Store and Google Play. Yo Radio is the most advanced user-driven streaming radio service on the market today. Everything you would expect and more from the most full-featured platforms ever developed. Listen to an endless genre of music, podcasting, including our show via the Lineup channel, sports, news, and more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and always 100% free. Again, that's Yo Radio, available via the App Store, Google Play, or by visiting yoradio.com. You can also check out our podcast by going to lineupmedia.fm. Real quick, I wanted to plug our giveaways a little bit. So we just hit 300 likes on our Facebook page yesterday. Thank you to everybody that is supporting our page, that checks us out. We're going to do another t-shirt giveaway once we hit 500 likes. So if you wanted to help us get to that number, just share our page with your friends. Share it in the groups you might be in. We are also going to give away this belt at 1,000 likes. I'm going to grab it real quick here. Haven't put it on the show for a couple weeks. I thought I'd give it a quick plug here. So this is the old school NWA National Heavyweight Championship belt. I'm going to try to get it on camera as best as I can. Take myself off camera because this thing's better looking than I am. So this belt was made famous by Tully Blanchard, Dusty Rhodes primarily. Turn this around here. Got the NWA stamping on the leather. This is a very high quality belt, guys. This isn't just a toy that you can pick up at the store. I mean, these are legit, like, I don't know if you can see this. These are legit thick plates. Those are 4mm zinc plates, real leather. If you have any questions as far as who made it, just private message me and I'll give you information on that. But again, we're going to do that giveaway once we hit 1,000 likes. So we got a little ways to go, but we're also going to do our next t-shirt giveaway at 500. So help us out, share our page, and we'll keep you updated on that. So I totally forgot to do that at the start of the podcast, so I thought that was a good segue to do it now. So let's talk about what we'd like to see happen in the world of wrestling in 2020. And this could be large scale, small scale, anything and everything in between. And we'll take a little bit and talk about this, take maybe 20 minutes or so, and then probably wrap up the show. If you guys watching right now, if you have any suggestions or comments, thoughts of what you'd like to see happen in 2020, leave us a comment. We'll read them on the air. Cole, I'll let you go first. What's one thing you'd like to see happen? We'll kind of rapid fire this a little bit and go back and forth, and I don't know. We'll see what happens.
We can try to tackle this by looking at it by maybe promotion or a couple of promotions at a time. Like right now, independently, I would like to see NWA and some of the even Impact and some of these smaller promotions put some of these pieces together. ROH, they have a lot of talented guys. And instead of letting these guys walk on to other companies, AEW and WWE seem to be the front runners right now for a lot of people. It's like, why let them walk when you can do something with them? And so with Marty Scurll kind of being the head booker now for ROH and what that looks like, I'd like to see them take a turn of not letting wrestlers walk to what might feel like a bigger promotion.
Right.
Because we've seen that some of the bigger guys can leave WWE and AEW and make it. We've seen that some of them can make it before they ever get to WWE and AEW and be successful. So there's a market out there for guys like them. And I would like to see them get into that market and thrive, on a bigger level. And I think they have something going with Nick Aldis and Marty Scurll that will build programs very well.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what I'm seeing. And, I told you I didn't realize how much talent NWA had on their roster that were names that people could be familiar with and recognize. And so ROH the same has a lot of names. New Japan has always been really good. They just have to find a way to market a lot better to, this side.
Right. So piggybacking off what you said, I 100% agree that something I would like to see is, so I'm going to go back in time a little bit with a small history lesson. So back in the 80s, you had this media conglomerate, WWF at the time, so late 80s time frame. No one could compete with them by themselves. So you had NWA at the time, what would eventually become WCW. You had AWA, and I believe World Class Championship Wrestling. I think those are the three. There might have been one or two other smaller ones. I don't remember. If you guys are watching, help me out here. But basically, these three tried to come together with whatever, talent sharing or co-promoting events or whatever you want to call it. They tried to come together and compete with WWF at the time. Now, because you had promoters that had just too big of egos to basically coexist, it didn't work. I think nowadays you've got owners and promoters that could learn from the mistakes of 30, 40 years ago, that you could have, you've already started to see it, you could have NWA and Ring of Honor and New Japan. You can even throw in AEW. Impact, potentially. I don't know, because I know Impact kind of has a decent working relationship. I don't even want to say that. A decent relationship with WWE. But if you've got NWA, Ring of Honor, AEW, and New Japan, if they can all coexist, I don't even want to say coexist, if they could come together and have shows that they co-promote, and they've got multiple guys that, if you could have like a big super show of sorts, guys from AEW, Ring of Honor, New Japan, and NWA, ultimately you might be able to compete with WWE. I don't know. But to me, it's not about necessarily competing with WWE. It's just about putting out a better product. It creates intrigue for fans that, kind of like myself, that are sour towards WWE to some degree. I mean, I only purposely go out of my way to watch the big 4 pay-per-views: WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. If I catch any more of them, great. If I don't, no big deal. To me, though, if you had any show that had those four on it, talent from those 4 shows or those 4 companies, that would be a must watch. I don't care if it's a once a month thing. If you got guys from those 4 companies on a pay-per-view event, if it's once a month, I would watch it once a month. Now, for how long, I don't know. I don't know if it would get old, if they would just make some of the same mistakes that WWE does in terms of booking. You also have logistical stuff of, you'd have to somehow build and promote it on, the different shows and different platforms. There would be some logistical things to work out, but I think it's doable. I mean, they've already started it to some degree. The biggest thing I think they need to do is AEW, New Japan need to drop whatever's going on behind the scenes that has led to them not having a partnership to this point. I think they just need to let bygones be bygones. Whatever's going on, just drop it. And for the better of the 2 companies, for the better of the product, some partnership needs to come together. Those 2 especially, but I think it'd be great if all 4 did.
I'd say this even, you got to look at it like this. All these other promotions that aren't really WWE are only running like 30 guys on their actual roster.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? WWE's got probably 100 people on their roster. If you were to combine every show that they have a ton of people, which is, I'll talk about this when we talk about them, the lack of use of some of those people. But all these other rosters, they only have about 30 people maybe total on their roster. And out of those 30, probably 10 are names that you know. The rest are either upcoming talents or people who are in a gimmick change or transitioning, whatever it might be at that time of their career. But most of them have like a top 5 or 10 guys that are, or girls, who are just like, yeah, I know them, or yeah, they put on good matches, or yeah, that's somebody I follow. And so when you talk about tag teaming or coexisting in events, NWA and ROH, like if they bring their top 10 guys and their top 10 guys, now you have technically 10, really good matches that you could put out.
Right.
That's why I feel like WWE, like when they did Survivor Series, just about every match on that card was great. Why? Because they got their top 10 from NXT. They got their top, 10 or 15 from Raw and top 10 or 15 from SmackDown. They put them all in the same pay-per-view, and now you're like, oh, wow, these are good matches. Why haven't we seen this more often? And I think you'll see that at WrestleMania, too. I think we're going to get more of those kind of matches because of the call-ups and the different, angles and stuff that they're going to push. Mm-hmm. And I think if ROH, if Impact, I really think Impact needs to get in on that kind of a deal, too. if New Japan, if they can say, okay, hey, let's do once a quarter. Let's not even call it once a month. Let's say once every 3 or 4 months we put on some super showdown, battle of the shows kind of mentality or pay-per-view or whatever you want to call it, and put their top guys against their top guys, or even together with each other to fight another group, whatever. Think of the matches that you could get.
100% agree.
Think of the, and then it puts both promotions on the map. Think if New Japan was able to get some of their guys on AEW's next pay-per-view and say, hey, like, these are our top guys, and they get 1 or 2 put over on one of AEW's top guys on national television where people are really paying attention and watching, where all the scopes are on them. That's just going to say, okay, hey, I need to go watch that guy on New Japan.
Exactly. And by the way, I was actually looking on this this website. Basically says there are about 130 wrestlers or talent or whatever.
WWE?
Yeah, that doesn't even include interviewers, commentators, guys behind the scenes. That is just straight wrestlers that are on either Raw, SmackDown, 205 Live, or NXT. So,
and each show can only host maybe six matches, 8 matches depending on which show it is. But NXT, between them, there's probably 8 matches total in each one. So you're looking at a week, 24 to 32 matches, and you have 130 people that you got to try to fit into that.
Yeah, that's going to be slim pickings. Okay, so I think we're in agreement there. So there needs to be some kind of partnership formed with these companies that I think it's a pipe dream to consider WWE forming a partnership with any other wrestling organization. True. I think any other company is free game. Now, I know I mentioned that WWE has some sort of relationship with Impact just because they have a lot of TNA/Impact content on the network. I don't know.
They've just taken a lot of guys over the years too, so it's hard to not acknowledge their
but
past.
they had to have come to some sort of business agreement. They probably paid Impact, TNA, whatever, a certain amount of money to say, okay, we'd like to, have some of this content on our network as a part of, network specials on the Hardys or Kurt Angle or whoever. Which, I mean, I totally understand that. I don't think there's going to be a partnership, though, in terms of talent sharing. I think that does put Impact in a unique predicament, though, because knowing that you've got this history of a working relationship, I'll call it, with WWE, do you go down that road and explore a talent sharing, whatever you want to call it, with AEW, with New Japan, with Ring of Honor, with NWA? Because we've not seen it to this point. The only talent sharing, I'll call, and I'm just using that term loosely because I don't know what else to call it. The only talent sharing we've seen to this point is between Ring of Honor is sort of branching out to NWA. They're branching out to New Japan. That's been about it so far.
Right.
And it's
other than some of the top guys in AEW who have flex in their contracts.
Well, yeah, that's we've kind of touched on that already. But outside of Jericho and Moxley, Ring of Honor, you've got Marty Scurll in NWA, Flip Gordon in NWA. You've got some of these New Japan guys showing up on Ring of Honor shows, Ring of Honor guys showing up on New Japan shows, vice versa. But that's been about it so far.
Right.
I would just like to see it happen more often, and B, not just be Ring of Honor reaching out to these other companies. I would love to see there be more of that talent sharing. I don't know what else to call it, but that kind of ties into my next thing I'd like to see in 2020. So it's along the lines of what we've been talking about, but I would specifically like to see AEW and New Japan form a partnership or relationship or whatever, because I would like to see Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks both back in a New Japan ring. I would like to see them both, or all three, in a Ring of Honor ring. Now, that's just a selfish thing because I feel like those three, plus, with Cody, with Hangman Page, with Marty Scurll, they kind of are what propelled, in my opinion, the indie craze, and that's why we have more of a popularity with AEW, with Ring of Honor, and that has allowed for NWA to say, okay, we could probably thrive with this smaller studio-like wrestling show. I don't know. Just, again, that's kind of a selfish thing for me, but by the way, I know he won't watch this, but shout out to Matt Jackson and Flip Gordon with this shirt, kind of old school, being the elite. I don't know.
I think I just see that AEW is not interested in that.
You don't think?
And it looks apparent to me that they're headed towards, and this could be a Tony Khan thing, where they're just going to be about AEW, which, based off of history, that would be the smart thing to do, because that's all we've ever seen in wrestling history is promotions being about themselves, which is why you had the WCW, WWE clash, clash,
Right.
because they were all about their own businesses. But that was the time when wrestling was great, right? Because there was two promotions that were putting on great things. You had guys from both shows kind of flip-flopping around, and it made you be on your toes.
Right.
But I think Tony Khan is more concerned about building AEW, and anything that doesn't build AEW, I don't think is on their radar. And to them, those guys going over to New Japan doesn't really benefit AEW.
No, I agree. That's where and I know you kind of come up with some sort of a working agreement to where, let's say you're an AEW talent, but you get injured on a New Japan show. That's where you need to come to some sort of agreement ahead of time to say, okay, if any of our talent gets hurt on your show, then it's not going to be just us that picks up the dime on the contract, that we're going to be paying this guy while he's not out, or while he's out but not wrestling. Again, I know there's a little I shouldn't say little. There are logistical things that would have to be worked out. I think you could do it. I don't know if I agree from the standpoint of AEW is not interested. I think to some degree they're not, because they're more focused on getting their product out as is now. They're working to get more traction with Dynamite, more traction with their pay-per-view events, and I totally get that. But I'm talking long term. I think so. By later this year, they will have had, right now they've got a year under their belt. Technically, I mean, I think 6, 7, 8 months from now, I think it's something they could explore. I don't know. That's, again, that last one is just a selfish thing. I don't even want to say for nostalgic reasons. I feel like the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega to this point have put on better matches with Ring of Honor and New Japan. I don't know if it's because they're trying to cater to American audiences. If that's their logic, they need to get rid of that logic, because people that are watching want to see what they watched in Ring of Honor, what they watched in New Japan. And it could be a time allotment thing. I don't know.
I feel like it's more of a backseat thing. I think, again, we've talked about this before. Like, all those guys seem to have taken the L more often since they've joined AEW. They seem to take in the backseat and push guys like Private Party and, give like spotlights to other people. And the reason why is because their name's on the card, but the winner is not them. And so, like, I that's why I'm saying, as we kind of transition with AEW in 2020, I'd like to see them now put the spotlight on the people who it needs to be on. I'd like to see the spotlight be on Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks and even Cody. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them actually now set a standard with AEW that says, oh, okay, Jon Moxley's the AEW champion. Cool. Okay, the Young Bucks are the tag team champions, the best tag team in the world. Okay, cool. I'd like to see a mid-card title introduced, so we can
Agreed.
So we can get another belt on somebody who deserves to have that kind of spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see their women's division step it up. I mean, that's, to me, the one spot where they are not really succeeding. I love their emphasis on tag team wrestling. They had a lot of tag teams. I've talked to you about it before, about how I'd like to see more tag teams go there.
Mm-hmm.
because there's an emphasis there. But I feel like they have enough talented women to where the emphasis needs to be on putting on actually good women matches, because WWE was doing it and then they dropped the ball. And this would be the perfect time to capitalize on that whole women's revolution.
Yep. 100% agree.
With women's wrestling, and actually stick with it and make it a priority. And so that might take getting another one or two women in that division, whether it's Tenelli Dashwood or someone from WWE that might step down, or whatever, Tessa Blanchard, whatever the case may be.
Right.
I think they need one or two more names to really capitalize on it, but they got a ton of talented women that I feel like they just need to put a little bit more emphasis on. So, but yeah, I'd love to see AEW just put focus on where the focus needs to be, build their product. If they're going to go 2 shows in 2020, which I know there's kind of a rumor that they might add a second show, they need to start putting emphasis on the right people and getting those people built up and in the right positions.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with everything you said. Kind of piggybacking off something you said is more titles in AEW. Now, I know we talked about either last show or the show before about there's a rumor that they're going to introduce the 6-man tag team titles on, or at least they're either going to have a tournament or a tournament final or a tournament final and semifinal. I don't know, but there's allegedly going to be some form of a 6-man title introduction, whether it's the whole thing or a tournament part of the tournament. I don't know, but supposedly it's going to happen on Jericho's Cruise next year. I think if you're AEW, I think you need to do one of two things. Either need to introduce the 6-man tag titles sooner than later, and I'm talking like, so Revolution's at the end of this month. I think you need to do it at the next pay-per-view, whether, again, it's the whole tournament or a tournament final, or you need to introduce a new singles title, a new mid-card title, again, as soon as the next pay-per-view after Revolution, whether that's, May, whenever it might be. And then do whichever one you don't do in a few months, do that next one on the Jericho Cruise. If you want to have a Jericho Cruise be a landmark event to show, hey, stuff can happen. They switched the tag titles on the cruise this last go around. I think you need to have a singles mid-card title, like you said, and I agree with having a 6-man tag title. I don't know what you would call their mid-card title, because I think the television title's overused already, because you've got one in Ring of Honor and in WA now. I don't think you go the route of having a United States title, because that's what WWE is using, and in New Japan.
The European.
I'm getting there. So Intercontinental you can't use because, well, you don't want to say can't, but WWE and New Japan also use those. Do you go the route of, like you said, having a European title, even though, that's what WWE used in the past? Do you try to come up with a, I don't know, you can't use North American title because, again, it's been being used in NXT. Do you have it like the AEW Eurasian title? I don't know. I don't know how they go about that. Either way, I think they need to have a mid-card title, a singles mid-card title, and a 6-man tag title. So
yeah, there's ways they could go about it. My thing right now is with a 6-man tag. If you're talking tournament, do they really have enough guys to do like a full-fledged tournament?
You could probably,
how many 6-man tag or three-man groups do you have? As far as you have, Lucha Express. You can do the Best Friends with Orange Cassidy. Being the elite, the elite guys. You could do any compilation of them. And then you got the Inner Circle. But, other than that, you'd have to almost build a couple more.
I think you could just throw you could throw together one-offs. I hate calling them that, but one-offs that at least you wouldn't expect to win the title, but maybe they throw a swerve. I don't know. But like you said, you've got Lucha Express. You've got Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. You've got, you could put together, like, Cody and Dustin and, like, QT Marshall or something like that.
Right.
You could do, Young Bucks and Kenny. You could. It's funny we're leaving out Hangman Page, and that's kind of the storyline that they're running with right now. You could throw together guys from, like you said, Inner Circle. You could do like a Kip Sabian and the hybrid tag team.
Right.
You could throw together MJF with Butcher and Blade.
Lucha Bros and somebody. I mean, there's
Lucha Brothers and SEMA. You know, there are SCU. We're leaving at SCU.
I forgot about SCU.
Man, what is wrong with us?
But like I said, like as far as the tournament goes, like
you could have 8 teams
to make that belt mean something. I feel like they would need to put just a little bit more emphasis on there being more than just duo tag teams.
You need to have trios, stables.
You know,
or of sort. They need to have more. If they only wanted to have even, you know, a 4-team tournament, they could probably pull that off. I mean,
I'm all down for it. When they introduce it, I just feel like they need to make sure that there are legitimate. That's one of the things I can't stand about WWE right now, is the lack of putting the belts on teams that are established teams and then putting off one-off teams and putting the belts on them.
Oh, I agree.
You know, there needs to be emphasis on the fact that, they're a group, you know, like
right.
the Shield. You know, the Shield would have been a perfect,
exactly,
6-man team to put the belts on because they were a legitimate group. And so that's my thing with AEW is being intentional about what your belts are.
Right. And they could throw in like a special stipulation where, like, hey, our 6-man tag titles are always going to be defended under elimination rules. So, you know, each person has to be eliminated from a team for that team to lose, kind of thing.
Right.
There's ways they could go about it. Something I'm going to throw in as an honorable mention because it's already happened. So Ring of Honor just introduced their Pure Championship. I should reintroduce because they had it a few years ago. But I was not watching Ring of Honor at that point, so I was not familiar with the special rules in which it's defended. I was familiar with the prior champions. AJ Styles was their inaugural champion. You had Jay Lethal, Samoa Joe, Nigel McGuinness, Daniel Bryan when he was Bryan Danielson at that point. But it's defended under unique rules, and so the rules are: so each wrestler has 3 rope breaks to stop submission holds and pinfalls during the match. After a wrestler exhausts those rope breaks, submission and pin attempts under the ropes by the opponent are considered legal. I mean, I think that's a cool rule. There are no closed fist punches to the face allowed in a pure match. Only open hand slaps or chops to the face are allowed. Punches to other parts of the body are permitted, except for low blows, obviously. The first use of a closed fist would get a warning, and the second would cause the wrestler to be penalized a rope break. If he is already out of rope breaks, he would be disqualified. A wrestler is subject to a 20 count by the referee if the wrestler goes to the floor. So I like this concept of a championship having certain rules. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you got to be different, and I do like the stipulations. I feel like for a smaller company, it's harder to get those kind of things to stick because you got to have a following that understands what those rules are.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the newcomer is going to be like, well, what's going on?
Right.
And so I feel like something like that might work better in AEW because they have a following that once they get those rules established, it's like, that makes, like the 24/7 championship in WWE, it's actually over with the crowd because of the fact that it's a product that's so heavily watched. They're like, I understand the rules. I understand that storyline because of the rules that were placed with the belt. And so I feel like it's a thing that would do better in a promotion that has a following that actually pays attention on a week-by-week basis.
Right. So yeah, that's really all I had as far as, scenarios or stuff I'd like to have happen in 2020, at least on a large scale. I mean, there are smaller things that I'm not going to necessarily go into, but just titles I would like to see put on people. I want to see Drew McIntyre as champion. I want to see Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler pushed to some degree because I think they're great in the ring. In general, I just
together or solo.
Either. I'd prefer solo. I just want to see guys pushed in general that can actually work in the ring and not be pushed in a comedy segment or just a garbage segment. Period. And that goes for a lot of guys. I mean, again, that's Ziggler, Bobby Roode. Alistair Black, they're getting there. I hate the fact that he's just squashing people. I like the little program he had with Buddy Murphy. That was cool. I think they need to push him towards the United States title at this point. Because I think they're going to push Drew McIntyre for the main title. I don't think they're going to take it off of him unless they push Alistair Black as a heel, which, I mean, they could go that route. So, yeah.
My big thing with WWE right now is we talked about it, they have so much talent. Use it.
Right.
Stop bringing in Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar and, all these other guys who might have a name. Use the people that you signed, that you saw the talent in, that you took the time to pull them away.
Right.
Vince McMahon's throwing out these big deals to guys that they don't plan on using.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't offer the Revival almost $1 million a year to be there and throw them in segments that you're not using them. You don't legitimize them as actual threats.
I view the Revival, and this is the reason I'm so upset about how they're treating the Revival is because, so again, I consider myself an old school fan, so I grew up on, the Horsemen and Sting and Hogan and Andre and Macho Man and all those guys. I look at the Revival as like reincarnation, so to speak, of Arn Anderson and just how good he was in the ring and ring psychology, and I view it as such an insult that they're treating them the way they are because they're better than that. I mean, I would probably put them in the top 3 best tag teams in WWE /NXT, and they've used them poorly, and I get why they want out of WWE. It makes sense because they're not treating them like they should.
What's crazy to me is that AEW's put such a focus on tag team wrestling, but WWE has better tag teams.
Uh-huh.
AEW's got like 4 really great tag teams. The others are good, but WWE has established tag teams that they could be putting on way better matches. There could be more emphasis on the tag belts.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much that's there that they don't utilize. I'd love to see that change. They did this whole women's revolution push, and then it's like it died.
Mm-hmm.
And they took all these women who were just killing it. They ruined them all. They pushed them all down under 3 top women, and the rest all got pushed to the wayside. And it's like, why? And so I'm sitting here looking at WWE. They have all this talent. You have all these people. If you're not going to space them out, first off. I still feel like Raw has so much and SmackDown has so little.
It's very concentrated. I agree.
I mean, you look at Raw's roster and you're like, wow. And then you're wondering why they're putting on crap shows. You have all these people. Like, why are you not using them? Then I look at SmackDown and I'm like, they got like 5 guys who could be considered to me as like worthy of the main belt,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest are kind of like, you didn't build them right. That person's not ready. And you put a whole NXT actually to me has more guys ready to wear a main belt than SmackDown does. And
I think NXT has more guys ready to wear the main belt than SmackDown and Raw combined potentially.
Raw has a ton of guys that are just waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, like they're just waiting for. I mean, Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, Drew McIntyre, Aleister Black, Seth Rollins. The list goes on. I'm forgetting people, I'm sure, but there are so many people just sitting on that roster waiting for a chance to shine, waiting for their moment, and it's like, what do you do when you have all this talent? That's why I'm glad they sent someone like Finn Balor to NXT. Still aren't using him correctly yet.
I wonder, not to get off the tangent, I wonder if he just requested that because he knew he could have better matches and didn't necessarily care about being put in a main event picture, because NXT guys are making just as much as Raw or SmackDown guys because of the USA deal. As far as money goes.
I just feel like he's still underutilized. Like, we're not seeing him. NXT is also kind of a bi-weekly show with some of these talents. Like, some of them are only on there every other week. Mm-hmm. But you just got a lot of guys who are ready in WWE, who we're ready for the next phase of wrestlers in WWE. And some of these guys need to take the back seat now. And I think we need to see that transition start to happen. Would love to see Undisputed Era on Raw or SmackDown and the entire squad get a push. Love, what they're doing on NXT. Want to see that continue, to see some of those other guys step up to replace those roles of people who are on their way up.
Yep. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up. We're going to be back this Thursday at 9 a.m. Topic still to be determined at this point, but I'm sure we're going to recap tonight's Raw. We'll recap NXT and Dynamite on
Plenty
Wednesday.
to recap, yeah.
Yeah, I think Thursdays are going to be a little more recap and a little less topic, and then Mondays are going to be a little less recap and a little more topic. But we'll still shoot for having topics every show. We're also going to shoot for starting to have guests soon. Hopefully, we can make some traction on that, to be determined there as well. I know we've got some local shows coming up. One on February the 29th, Ring of Honor at the Family Arena in St. Charles. Again, we're based out of Edwardsville, Illinois. We're about 20 minutes northeast of St. Louis. And then we have AEW Dynamite that was just announced a few days ago, coming to the Chaifetz Arena in St. Louis at St. Louis University on Wednesday, April the 8th. So I'm excited about both of those. Ideally, I'd like to have maybe some guests on if we can to help promote those, but we'll see what happens there. Going to try to see if we can leverage some of our connections that the both of us have, not necessarily high-profile connections necessarily, but we'll see what happens there. But thanks for everyone that joined us today, and we will see you on Thursday.
And so, goodbye. Mwah. And good night. Bang.
This podcast was a presentation of LightUpMedia.fm.